Hey, what up, everybody? I hope all of y'all is having a blessed and humble day. I hope all of y'all is continue to have a blessed and humble day. My bad, I stuttered there a little bit. I was trying to do this, but this is part two right here to yesterday's live. Didn't get a chance to do it on the late night, but I did reschedule it in the middle of the night. So let's get this show started. Thanks to everybody that has shown support that is rocking out with a shorty. And let's do this. Let's talk about the missing sub and the secret of Jekyll Island, the Titanic. Is there a distraction somewhere in this? I don't know. Let's see. Let's find out.
While Americans have been distracted by a rich guy who got lost in a submarine, quietly in the shadows, U.S. regulators approved the sale of synthetic lab-grown meat to the American public. This is not a parody. This is not a joke. Let's get into it. In this article from the Associated Press titled, U.S. approves nation's first lab-grown meat, chicken made from animal cells, it talks about how two California companies got the approval to sell this shit to us. So I'm thinking to myself, who could be that powerful to convince U.S. regulators to sell us synthetic lab-grown meat? And it's none other than our good buddy, Billy Boy Blue, who's been the primary investor in companies that are trying out different synthetic meats for us to enjoy. He's also one of the majority shareholders in Impossible Meats. So I'm thinking, this guy's just a computer wizard. He's not a nutritionist. He's not a scientist. Could he be after consolidating the food supply? I don't know. But what I do know is that Bill Gates is the largest private farmland owner in the United States. Not Jimbo, who comes from a long line of farmers, a tech billionaire. And you know what he's doing with this land? Nothing. Everything that was once growing on it. America, you should be very, very concerned right now with what is going on in the background while they keep flashing this billionaire who got lost in a submarine for the past few days, nonstop. Do you know that they just caught 123 people on the terrorist watch list trying to cross the border in Mexico? Something big is coming, or else all of the media networks wouldn't have agreed to show us this bullshit while our country is falling apart.
Mm.
Did you get my text? What do you think about?
So let's get straight to it, guys. So yesterday we spoke a little bit on it. I, gave my opinion, my perspective on what's going on about the submarine, how I felt and what I thought. And I stand 10 toes down on how I feel. Simple fact. Listen, these are millionaires that signed a waiver. They knew what they was getting into, and this is not the first time that it has happened. I've told plenty of people to do their research. Don't just go by what a shorty is saying, but to do your research, right? Hold on. I gotta. So, moral of the story is, in my opinion, this is a distraction. There's more things happening. After I show these videos, after I give my commentary, my reaction on the secrets of Jekyll Island and the reason why the Titanic, sank and much more. For those of y'all that missed the live, but I did the live yesterday morning. Y'all can go check it out right here on the Writers for Life brings you the Let's Talk About It podcast. Like I told y'all, something's coming. What's coming? If we connect the dots, listen, we could put two and two together. All I can say is, guys, we really have to start paying attention. I'm gonna show you this next video, and then I'm gonna start showing y'all. I'm gonna continue off on where I left off yesterday on the video of the secrets of Jekyll Island. But let's watch this video first. Gotta share the screen. So while most of us were asleep, this is what got approved underneath our noses. What else got approved? We'll find out.
To be disgusted. The source of this meat they need fast-growing cells, replicating cells, just like when you have a farm that makes fruit from a tree. You don't want to plant a new tree every week. You want a tree that gives you a lot of fruit. And this is what they're trying to do with meat. And so what do they find? Well, there's something called an immortalized cell, also known as a HeLa cell. HeLa after Henrietta Lacks, who sometime in the 1950s had cervical cancer, and they removed her cancer cells, put them in a petri dish to see how long would they continue replicating, and they're still replicating today. So if you've already started to read in between the lines, you may guess where I'm going with this, that they realized the best source for fast replicating cells to make lab-grown meat that you're going to eat are cancer and pre-cancer cells. That means taking cancerous and pre-cancerous cells, literally putting them as the base and having those replicate to continue as a fast as possible pace, produce the meat that you're going to eat.
This machine is 3D printing steak. The goal is to create a piece of meat without killing a cow. And this Israeli startup is one of the dozens of companies racing to perfect the process.
It turns out that cows aren't necessarily the most efficient way of making beef.
Still, for many scientists, the holy grail is to not just imitate meat, but actually make it. Back in 2013, professor and scientist Mark Post unveiled the first lab-grown burger at a live tasting in London. This one patty cost over $325,000 to make.
It's close to meat. It's not that juicy, but the consistency is perfect.
I think that was kind of one of those like pivotal moments where you're like, oh, this could be a thing.
But it wasn't until 2020 that funding for lab-grown food really started to pour in, with some startups drawing high-profile investments from the likes of Bill Gates and even traditional meat companies.
It's like everyone wants to hop on that bandwagon.
Here's how it works. Look at this perfectly marbled steak. The white stuff is fat, that gives it flavor. The pink stuff is muscle, that's for protein. Scientists had to figure out how to recreate both. First, they take stem cells from a cow and then grow them in a lab.
That means that we're replacing the body of the animal with what's called a bioreactor.
Getting the cells to grow under these conditions is no easy task.
Usually cells are attached to something. They grow in a petri dish or flasks, and they want to attach to something.
Here, the cells grow suspended in a liquid where they divide roughly once a day. Then scientists move the mass of cells to the tissue engineering lab, where they make something called bioinks.
This is the beginning of the bioprinting stage. The inks that we're using actually contain the cells that we've been growing in the labs previously.
There's one for muscle and one for fat. They're fed through these nozzles, and technicians can customize how much of each goes into the steak.
You can print any structure that you're able to design. So you upload a file to the printer and you can present a steak of pretty much any size and also any proportions.
You can't put a patent on growing and on raising a cow. You can go buy cattle right now, right? You can go buy 8 cattle and get a huge, actually, I think in Texas it's only 4, and get massive tax write-off for it first. But you could produce your own cattle. You can have it butchered and you can eat it yourself, or you can sell it to other people. All you got to do is make sure you have to put it through the right processing to make sure that it's not going to hurt anybody. But you can pretty much do that all you want. This right here, this fucking lab-grown meat, that is a patented process. And you can't do it unless you pay Bill Gates or whoever else owns this technology to use it third party. That's reason number one. Yeah. Reason number 2 is what I talk about all the time, and that's the king's deer, right? It's like a feudalistic principle where the good meat belongs to the aristocracy and the king, right? The warden, the governor, whomever else, and you eat fucking bugs. That's what it is, right? I want the high quality protein. You get this lab grown shit that's going to give you fucking cancer. By the way, you got to pay us just to make the shit.
To be disgusted. The source of this meat, they need fast-growing cells, replicating cells, just like when you have a farm that makes fruit from a tree. You don't want to plant a new tree every week. You want a tree that gives you a lot of fruit. And this is what they're trying to do with meat. And so what do they find? Well, there's something called an immortalized cell, also known as a HeLa cell. HeLa after Henrietta Lacks, who sometime in the 1950s had cervical cancer, and they removed her cancer cells, put them in a petri dish to see how long would they continue replicating, and they're still replicating today. So if you've already started started to read in between the lines, you may guess where I'm going with this, that they realized the best source for fast replicating cells to make lab-grown meat that you're going to eat are cancer and pre-cancer cells. That means taking cancerous and pre-cancerous cells, literally putting them as the base and having those replicate to continue as a fast as possible pace, produce the meat that you're going to eat.
This machine is 3D printing steak. The goal is to create a piece of meat without killing a cow. And this Israeli startup is one of the dozens of companies racing to perfect the process.
It turns out that cows aren't necessarily the most efficient way of making beef.
Still, for many scientists, the holy grail is to not just imitate meat, but actually make it. Back in 2013, professor and scientist Mark Post unveiled the first lab-grown burger at a live tasting in London. This one patty cost over $325,000 to make.
It's close to meat. It's not that juicy, but the consistency is perfect.
I think that was kind of one of those like pivotal moments where you're like, oh, this could be a.
So basically, they're trying to get us to eat the synthetic meat that our bodies really are not going to be able to sustain. Our body needs them nutrients. Our body needs that H2O, that H3O. It needs them fruits, them vegetables. Like in reality, we're not supposed to be eating meats like that. And if we do, I think it's supposed to be fish, and it's two types of fish, lamb. But other than that, we're not really supposed to be eating the meats that we're eating, and we are. Like, I really want people to understand, while we was asleep, they was trying to pass certain things. When I put on the video of the secrets of Jekyll Island and start, off where I finished off on the last live from last night, y'all will understand where, why all this goes hand in hand, and why I'm saying that these millionaires, did the dumbest thing ever. My condolences to their family, but they knew exactly what they was doing. And Lord knows, I'm sorry if these people are somewhere, saved. Like they could have probably, found a portal. Listen, I'm sorry. We do not know, because right now it feels like we are in an episode of Marvel. I don't know, we're on Spider-Man or what the hell, where like the multiverses, collided and shit like that. Like it's crazy. Like, how they've been going around talking about is Kazam, not Shazam. And, I could just keep going, but both movies do actually exist. Crazy as shit, right? And the ocean is one great ass mystery. But the whole point of this is to try to get y'all to open up that third eye if y'all want to. And like I said on my last live, for those of you that are still asleep, stay the fuck in bed then. I'm sorry, but you got to be like that.
Be a thing.
But it wasn't until 2020 that funding for lab-grown food really started to pour in, with some startups drawing high-profile investments from the likes of Bill Gates and even traditional meat companies.
It's like everyone wants to hop on that bandwagon.
Here's how it works. Look at this perfectly marbled steak. The white stuff is fat, that gives it flavor. The pink stuff is muscle, that's for protein. Scientists had to figure out how to recreate both. First, they take stem cells from a cow and then grow them in a lab.
That means that we're replacing the body of the animal with what's called a bioreactor.
Getting the cells to grow under these conditions is no easy
Y'all
task.
hear this shit?
Usually cells are attached to something. They grow in a petri dish or flasks, and they want to attach to something.
Here, the cells grow suspended in a liquid where they divide roughly once a day. Then scientists move the mass of cells to the tissue engineering lab, where they make something called bioinks.
Because this is the beginning of the bioprinting stage. The inks that we're using actually contain the cells that we've been growing in the labs previously.
There's one for muscle and one for fat. They're fed through these nozzles, and technicians can customize how much of each goes into the steak.
You can print any structure that you're able to design. So you upload a file to the printer, and you can present a steak of pretty much any size and also any proportions.
You can't put a patent on growing and on raising a cow. You can go buy cattle right now, right? You can go buy 8 cattle and get a huge, actually, I think in Texas it's only 4 and get massive tax write-off for it first. But you could produce your own cattle. You can have it butchered and you can eat it yourself or you can sell it to other people. All you got to do is make sure you have to put it through the right processing to make sure that it's not going to hurt anybody. But you can pretty much do that all you want. This right here, this
I want y'all to pay close attention to this video and the video I played in the beginning, because when y'all start seeing the documentary of the secrets of Jekyll, the secret meetings in Jekyll Island, y'all will see so much, a lot, y'all.
Fucking lab-grown meat, that is a patented process. And you can't do it unless you pay Bill Gates or whoever else owns this technology to use it third party. That's reason number one. Reason number two is what I talk about all the time, and that's the king's deer, right? It's like a feudalistic principle where the good meat belongs to the aristocracy and the king, right? The warden, the governor, whomever else, and you eat fucking bugs. That's what it is, right? I want the high quality protein. You get this lab grown shit that's going to give you fucking cancer. And by the way, you got to pay us just to make the shit.
To be disgusted. The source of this meat, they need fast.
Did y'all hear how he said, hold on, let me. Y'all hear what he said, right? They get the profit and we get this lab grown meat that produces nothing but cancer. This is what just to make more money, they want to produce these meat products faster. It's going to harm us in the long run. That's all I got to say. Like, do y'all research. Like, really do y'all research. Let me get on to this next video so I can show y'all. We're going to jump into the documentary of the Titanic, Secret of Jekyll Island. So let me share the screen real quick. Share. Let's make you a little theater mode. And we're going to continue yesterday's video. So we're going to start it off right here. Those of y'all want to catch the first 16 minutes and 27 seconds of this video, y'all can go to, the first live that I did yesterday, part 1 to this live. This is part 2. So let's get to it.
While Eustace is still slandered with derogatory labels, a Marxist tactic that has been effective since the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, which I also covered in a prior video. Can anyone today deny that overt media censorship exists, regardless of what one's own political ideology is? While the Federal Reserve Act was allegedly passed in an effort to establish economic stability and prosperity in the U.S. by introducing a central bank to oversee monetary policy, one needs only look back at the history of the last century, including both world wars, which were financed by debt, and the subsequent inflation and financial consolidation of power, to see that the economic stability and prosperity was not intended for the general population, but for a small, secretive elite that does not owe its loyalty to any one nation, race, or religion, but to a globalist political agenda opposed to our freedom and committed to our servitude. In actuality, American history is far different from the way it has been presented in modern schools or portrayed on the big screen. Hollywood has a tendency to finance and promote blockbuster movies about historic events, which oftentimes, if not always, camouflages key points with a love story or some other distraction. One example of this is the movie Titanic, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, who put in a great job as an actor, but the film did not do the historic event justice, as it concealed the fact that many influential opponents to the Federal Reserve.
Like I told y'all yesterday, the movie was just mostly based on the romance part of whatever happened, but they did not explain to us what really happened in the Titanic and why it sank.
Central banking system lost their lives with the sinking of that ship. It was this notorious incident in 1912 which made the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 possible. One of the most influential and popular documents exposing the formation of the Federal Reserve is a book written in 1994 by G. Edward Griffith called The Creature from Jekyll Island, which recounts a secret meeting that took place in 1910 on Jekyll Island, a stretch of white sand beaches and beautiful landscape off the coast of Georgia. It was an exclusive gathering of American financiers, politicians, and banking elite who covertly plotted the draft legislation for the creation of the all-powerful central banking system that not only financed both world wars, but has become an accomplice in the support of totalitarian regimes throughout the world. An excerpt from the book claims that, quote, there are few historians who would challenge the fact that the funding of World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War was accomplished by the Mandrake mechanism through the Federal Reserve System. An overview of all wars since the establishment of the Bank of England in 1694 suggests that most of them would have been greatly reduced in severity, or perhaps not even fought at all, without fiat money. It is the ability of governments to acquire money without direct taxation that makes modern warfare possible, and a central bank has become the preferred method of accomplishing that. We theorize a strategy dubbed the Rothschild formula, in which the world's money cabal deliberately encourages war as a means of stimulating the profitable production of armaments and keeping nations perpetually in debt. This is not profit-seeking, it is genocide. It is not a trivial matter, therefore, to inquire into the possibility that our elected and non-elected leaders are, in fact, implementing the Rothschild formula today.
When I did my research on this topic, I came to the conclusion, which may startle you folks here.
Now, that right there explains in detail a little bit, and I hope that y'all understand why the Titanic sank down in 1912, and it wasn't even discovered all the way into 1985. Like, they knew they couldn't go nowhere there. Like, it's been supposedly myths and conspiracy theories about there, being a curse on that island and much more. I could just keep going. But if we know our history, we know, kind of like what's happening, what's going on when things like this happen. Just listen, it's just so much, and we just need y'all to wake up if y'all want to wake up. But if not, listen, stay in the matrix. Y'all find out when y'all ready to come back to us. Morpheus will come and find y'all.
Of accomplishing that. We theorize a strategy dubbed the Rothschild formula, in which the world's money cabal deliberately encourages war as a means of stimulating the profitable production of armaments and keeping nations perpetually in debt. This is not profit-seeking, it is genocide. It is not a trivial matter, therefore, to inquire into the possibility that our elected and non-elected leaders are, in fact, implementing the Rothschild formula today.
When I did my research on this topic, I came to the conclusion, which may startle you folks here, that the Federal Reserve System does not need to be audited. It needs to be abolished. First of all, Jekyll Island is a real island. It's off the coast of Georgia. And it was on that island back in 1910 that the Federal Reserve System was conceived at a highly secret meeting.
Y'all hear it? 1910 in a secret meeting, which means that a lot of us did not know about this. A lot of us is just learning about this. Like me, I've been doing my research. Like I tell y'all, I don't want to do no lives unless I got backup. I don't want to sit here and not have no receipts to back me up on what I'm saying. No, I'm going to sit here, and when I'm going to say what I'm going to say, I'm going to have something to back me up. I'm not just going to speak and no proof like, oh no, Yeah, I know what I'm saying. I don't know why I'm saying it, but I'm saying it. No, man, I know why I'm saying it. I've done enough research to sit here and speak on what I'm speaking on.
Took place there. And what I'd like to do is talk about this meeting and show you that, in fact, the Federal Reserve was created there, and that there was a lot of secrecy surrounding it. And then we'll be confronted with the question, why the secrecy? When things are done in secret, there are often things to hide. And we'll explore what it was that they wanted to hide. And when we finally understand what that was, we'll be face to face with one of the most important facts about the Federal Reserve System that is not generally known. In 1910, Jekyll Island was privately owned by a small group of millionaires. In those days, they were millionaires. In today's dollars, they would be billionaires from New York. This is where their families went to spend the winter months. It was a resort island, a resort club. It was called the Jekyll Island Club. And there was a very elaborate clubhouse there, which was the center of their social activities. It's still there, by the way, if anybody wants to visit it. The island has been purchased by the state of Georgia, and this clubhouse has been renovated. It's a beautiful thing. And around this clubhouse, they had cottages, which were built by many of the families that belonged to the club. Cottages are not exactly the word I would have chosen to describe these structures. I remember on taking the tour through one of them, the guide said that there were 14 bathrooms in that cottage. So you have an idea of the kind of elegance that was there. In any event, the number of bathrooms has nothing to do with this story. I just get hung up on that because it's hard for me to imagine a cottage with that much running plumbing. But the important point was that this is where the Federal Reserve System was conceived, is in that clubhouse. So let's tell that story. It all began in November of 1910, when Senator Nelson Aldrich sent his private railroad car to the New Jersey Railroad Station, where there it was in readiness for the arrival of himself and 6 other men who were instructed to come under conditions of great secrecy. For example, they were told to come one at a time, not to be seen together, not to dine together on the night of their departure. If they had arrived at the same time, they were instructed to pretend as though they didn't even know each other. They were to avoid newspaper reporters.
Now, I want y'all to pay close attention to what he is saying and what he is about to say, because this right here will expose a lot of what they did. Like, listen, no copyright, no rights reserved on this video. I'm just sitting here giving my commentary, giving my reaction, and I'm just here bringing the news to y'all. Not here to judge, but at the end of the day, listen, we gotta wake the fuck up, guys. We need to open that third eye. Those of y'all that are woke, keep speaking up. Those of y'all that are fuck sleep, stay the fuck in bed. Like, yo, this is common sense. If we do our research, we can figure out what the hell is going on. Like, a lot of this stuff, it wasn't taught to us in school at all. Like, we really had to sit here and read about this and learn about this in other places. It's crazy. The United States is the only place that the news outlets lie to you in your face and y'all believe it. It's crazy that other countries, they know what's going to happen to us and what's happening to us before we even find out what's going on. Come on, make it make sense.
Because these were well-known men, and had they been spotted by reporters, which often frequented the railroad station, especially had they been seen together, many questions would have been asked. One of the men carried a shotgun in a big black case, so that if he had been asked where he was going, he was prepared to say that he was going on a duck hunting trip. And the interesting thing about that little piece of the history is that this man, we find out later from his biographer, never fired a gun in his life. He even had to borrow that shotgun in order to participate in this deception. Even after they got on board the railroad car, this pattern continued. They were told to use first names only, not to use last names. Well, the train traveled for 2 nights and a day on a 1,000-mile journey to the south. And when they awoke on the second morning, the car was on the siding, the railroad siding at Brunswick, Georgia. And from there, they took the ferry boat across the inland strait to Jekyll Island and to the clubhouse. And for the next 9 days, these men sat around a table and hammered out all the important details of what eventually became the Federal Reserve System. And incidentally, if you visit that clubhouse today, you can walk down to the end of the one corridor there, and on a door is a brass plaque. And it says, in this room, the Federal Reserve System was created. When they were done, they got back on board the train, back to New York, and disappeared. And for quite a few years after that, these men denied that any such meeting ever took place. It wasn't until after the Federal Reserve was firmly established that only then did they begin to talk openly about it. They wrote books on it. One of them wrote a magazine article, and they gave interviews to newspaper reporters. And so now, many years later, it's possible for us to go to the public record and find in print detailed descriptions of what happened at that meeting. Well, who were these men? The first one I've already mentioned, the one with the railroad car, Senator Nelson Aldrich, who was the Republican whip in the Senate. He was also chairman of the National Monetary Commission, which was that special committee of Congress which was created for the purpose of...
See, first person he mentions is a senator. And y'all wonder why so many people don't trust the system? It's crazy when y'all find out who are the people in our era that are a part of these secret meetings. And if y'all was to find out, it's crazy. It goes on from people in the government to celebrities, artists, listen, lyricists. I could just keep going. But you know what? Don't go by what I'm saying. Go do y'all research.
Proposing legislation which was to reform banking. That was the idea. Banking needed reform. And the American people were greatly concerned in those days over things that were going on in the banking industry. People were losing their money in the banks because they weren't keeping their promises to hold their deposits in reserve. There were runs on the bank and the banks couldn't pay the people back. But most of all, they were concerned over the concentration of financial power that was in the hands of a small group of very powerful and large banks in New York on Wall Street. This is what they called the money trust. That was the name. And it was a very popular expression in the newspapers. And quite a few politicians were elected to office on their campaign promise to break the grip of the money trust. President Wilson was one of those politicians, by the way. So that was the purpose of the National Monetary Commission, which was to propose legislation, which eventually became the Federal Reserve Act, to break the grip of the money trust over the financial markets of America. Aldrich was a business associate of J.P. Morgan. He was the father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller, Jr., which means, of course, that eventually he became the grandfather of Nelson Rockefeller, our former...
Now pay attention. Then I say all this goes hand in hand. Do y'all not see something kind of like repeating itself? Like really pay attention and let me know. Yo, leave it in the comments. Do y'all notice what's repeating? What cycle is repeating itself? What's happening? What's going on right now that happened back then that we didn't notice? Let's see if y'all figure it out.
Former vice president. You remember his full name was Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller. So he derived his middle name from his famous grandfather. The second person at the meeting was Abraham Piatt Andrew, who was Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. He later became a congressman, but he was very prominent in banking circles. Frank Vanderlip was there. He was the president of the National City Bank of New York, which was the largest and the most powerful of all the banks in the country, representing the financial interests of William Rockefeller and the international investment firm of Kuhn Loeb and Company. Henry Davison was there. He was the senior partner of the J.P. Morgan Company. Charles Norton was present. He was the president of the First National Bank of New York, which was another one of the giants. Also, there was Benjamin Strong, who was the head of J.P. Morgan's Bankers Trust Company. And incidentally, 3 years later, when the Federal Reserve System was finally created, he became the first head of the system.
Blessings, Lesby. Blessings, blessings. Anybody catching the replay, anybody, that comes in, go check out Lesby. Make sure y'all sub up. I'm about to make you a mod on here so you can leave your link, yo.
And finally, there was Paul Warburg, who was probably the most important of all the men there because of his knowledge of banking as it was practiced in Europe. Paul Warburg was born in Germany. He eventually became a naturalized American citizen. He was a partner in Kuhn Loeb and Company. He was a representative of the Rothschild banking dynasty in England and France. And through all the years of his banking in America, he remained in very close contact with his brother, Max Warburg, who was the head of the Warburg Banking Consortium in Germany and the Netherlands. Paul Warburg was one of the wealthiest men in the world. And those of you who are Little Orphan Annie fans, you'll remember Daddy Warbucks. Well, Paul Warburg was the real Daddy Warbucks, after whom that character was named. And everyone at the time knew.
Did y'all hear what he said? I'm going to take it back. For those of y'all that don't know the history of everything that has happened around us, listen carefully to everything he has been saying. I just want to rewind it back just a little bit so y'all can hear the names and everything.
What they called the money trust. That was the name. It was a very popular expression in the newspapers. And quite a few politicians were elected to office on their campaign promise to break the grip of the money trust. President Wilson was one of those politicians, by the way. So that was the purpose of the National Monetary Commission, which was to propose legislation, which eventually became the Federal Reserve Act, to break the grip of the money trust over the financial markets of America. Aldrich was a business associate of J.P. Morgan. He was the father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller, Jr., which means, of course, that eventually he became the grandfather of Nelson Rockefeller, our former.
Pause it right here. Lesby, you're correct. You're not wrong. They did the same thing. If you watch this whole video, like the link is on the description down below. For those of y'all, it's called the Titanic Secrets of Jekyll Island. It explains to y'all, it explains to us the reason why they sank that ship. It talks about the twin boats. It talks about everything. It talks about the scams. It talks about all that. It talks about the senators, the presidents, all that are in there. Y'all listen to that and y'all start doing your research. Even till this day, y'all could find out who are the people that are a part of this. And you know what? Let me give y'all head starts. Allegedly, supposedly, the people in these secret meetings be the people like, allegedly Jay-Z and all of them. So like I said, this goes deep into the rabbit hole. This goes real deep into that rabbit hole. Yes, these things are happening because, let me put it like this. These things are happening. We're not supposed to know what's going on, but they're exposing these secret meetings and much more. They're distractions. See, these people go on to these islands. They have these little meetings. Basically, let me make a long story short like this, right? You got ops, right? For those of y'all that play Call of Duty and all this stuff, right? Liz B plays Far Cry and all that. I know a little bit about these games because my kids play, right? What do? Y'all got to get rid of the enemies, right? Y'all got to get rid of your ops in these games, right? To accomplish a mission. So when it comes to these secret meetings and all that, allegedly, supposedly, let's put it like that, because this is not, I'm not on my right StreamYard. I got to pay for my StreamYard, but I'm not even worried about that. I got more important things that, that matter right now than this StreamYard shit right now. Either way, I'm going to get into a live and do what I got to do and show y'all and express how I feel regardless of anything. But my whole point is that they did this all secretly to get rid of their ops, to get the Federal Reserve. These people were going against them. They didn't want them to get the Federal Reserve up. Federal Reserve is run by who? Nothing but criminals, allegedly, supposedly. You see where I'm coming from? So I'm hoping y'all kind of like understand. Like, I'm trying to break it down as much as I can without kind of, me saying what he's supposed to say. So, listen, I want y'all to pay close attention of the people that were in these meetings. No different now. I showed y'all the video of how, while we was, so distracted, trying to figure out about these submarines. Let me go back to that video and then I'll get back to this so I can show y'all real quick. Let's make a little long story short real quick. Share screen. Let's share. And let's get back to which video? This one. Oh, I got off of it? I'm going to have to get on it.
While Americans have been distracted by a rich guy who got lost in a submarine, quietly in the shadows, U.S. regulators approved the sale of synthetic lab-grown meat to the American public. This is not a parody. This is not a joke. Let's get into it. In this article from the Associated Press titled, U.S. Approves Nation's First Lab-Grown Meat, Chicken Made from Animal Cells, it talks about how 2 California companies got the approval to sell this shit to us. So I'm thinking to myself, who could be that powerful to convince U.S. regulators to sell us synthetic lab-grown meat? And it's none other than our good buddy, Billy Boy Blue, who's been the primary investor in companies that are trying out different synthetic meats for us to enjoy. He's also one of the majority shareholders in Impossible Meats. So I'm thinking, this guy's just a computer wizard. He's not a nutritionist. He's not a scientist. Could he be after consolidating the food supply? I don't know. But what I do know is that Bill Gates is the largest private farmland owner in the United States. Not Jimbo, who comes from a long line of farmers, a tech billionaire. And you know what he's doing with this land?
You know what I do know? We've been warned about this for years. We've been warned about it. People have left the states because they whistleblowed about this, and they wasn't supposed to talk about it. People have been hunted down, been put in prison, much more. Listen, get mad at me, but I'm just bringing y'all the news. I'm trying to get y'all to wake up. And like I said before, for those of you that are woke, listen, shout out. Let's keep speaking up. But for those of y'all that are fucking sleep, stay the fuck in bed. Real shit.
Nothing. Everything that was once growing on it. America, you should be very, very concerned right now with what is going on in the background while they keep flashing this billionaire.
Let's be, you good. Listen, you somebody that always shows support. Thank you for rocking out with a shorty. Like, listen, I know at times my lives get boring, but at the end of the day, I try to make them as educational, as much, as educational as I can. Like, I try to spread more awareness than anything. So, like, thank you so much for rocking out and showing support. I'm doing this so that y'all can wake up, so y'all can see, like, look, listen, if we know about this, y'all can know about this too. Like, a lot of us have been aware about all this right here that's happening right now in 2023, but a lot of us don't care. A lot of us just don't care. Them people that, it is what it is, or I don't give a fuck. Like, I get that in certain occasions it is what it is, but like in certain occasions that it is what it is, or that I don't give a fuck. Listen, when it goes knocking on your door, that's when we're gonna be hearing you like, oh shit. Like, yeah, like we warned you. Now you want to say some shit. Like, after you brought us down, said this, did that. Like, what the fuck? People asshole backwards, though. So I know that the group that I'm in does their research. You're a part of that group. Like, listen, we thinkers over here. Like, we don't sit here and go by he said, she said, or just follow a trend. At the end of the day, we are re-educating ourselves, and we're trying to spread awareness to those that are around us. Like, people could take the message, people could take, take this however it is, but at the end of the day, like we know what's gonna happen. And in certain situations like this right now, I can really say to those people that don't give a fuck, well then it is what it is. When the devil comes knocking at your door, you could tell him it is what it is. I used to be one of those people that was like, it is what it is, but that's because I didn't understand, and I couldn't find a way to wrap certain things around my head. But it took research, and then I started understanding, like, oh snap, it took for me to shut the fuck up sometimes and stop over talking some people to get the grip and understand where they're coming from. Because some people, listen, some people that are wise and have so much knowledge, they'll just come out here and then just put everything on us. I say it's boring because, listen, I'm always serious. Like, I mostly, I get the attention of the youth that's interested, like, in history and stuff like that. And I've always been interested in history. That's why I'm so, like, I could speak on certain things, but certain things I can't because it didn't really draw my attention at a certain point in time. But I know that the times it gets a little boring because, I sit here and I try to, like, but that's why I'm on this channel, because now I don't got to sit here and try to find words and hold back. No, man, screw that. I'm letting it all out on this channel. The other channel is more of a family channel. And even though at times I've sat here and I've, my daughter's got me with a swear jar. So I got to be careful on that channel. As y'all can see, I kind of like post my daughter more. I did a little video on the park with her the other day on here, but I'm going to start posting her more on that channel. She's going camping, so we're going to start doing more videos. She want to do TikToks. So I'm going to leave that channel as is, and this one's where we all going to let it all out. But like I was saying, Lisby, yo, thank you so much for your support. Like, listen, I watch your videos the same way because I know, listen, we got to show support where support is shown. And at the end of the day, what Lisby is doing is not bad. She's with her family. She's with her kids. She loves playing them games. She does different things. So if y'all haven't seen her, go make sure y'all check up to her. I'm going to continue with the video. I'm going to keep talking and giving, y'all more than welcome for anybody that comes into the panel, later on. If you are a mod on here, please, leave y'all links and network and get to know each other. Like, let's do this. Let's build. We're not here to bring nobody down. We're here to bring the news, nothing more, nothing less. But let's keep listening to what he's saying. For those of y'all that are kind of confused, yes, while we were asleep, they were trying to do a lot of things. And guess what? In order to get what they needed, they had to get rid of the ops. So for those of y'all that do, play games and stuff like that, just take this like that. Like, come on, man. They went down on a submarine with an Xbox controller or whatever it is. But hey, let's keep watching the video.
Who got lost in a submarine for the past few days, nonstop. Do you know that they just caught 123 people on the terrorist watch list trying to cross the border in Mexico? Something big is coming, or else all of the media networks wouldn't have agreed to show us this bullshit while our country is falling apart. Hey, did you get my text?
And that's some big facts. While we were asleep and while we was paying attention to that was happening. But see, I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I couldn't pinpoint it until I started doing. I had to, who I had to listen to? So big shout out right here. I've been listening to Papa Duck. Papa Duck has been warning us for the longest. So shout out Papa Duck for, bringing awareness to all this. And like I said again, and I'm going to keep saying it throughout this whole life, for those of you that want to stay asleep, stay the fucking bed. Just stay there. Let's get back to the video. I'm going to rewind it back a little bit so that y'all can understand. And I got to mute me because they're going to be playing music. Oh, what I do? See? I'm tripping. Guys, pay close attention, guys. Pay close attention.
We find out later from his biographer, never fired a gun in his life. He even had to borrow that shotgun in order to participate in this deception. Even after they got on board the railroad car, this pattern continued. They were told to use first names only, not to use last names. Well, the train traveled for 2 nights and a day on a 1,000-mile journey to the south. And when they awoke on the second morning, the car was on the siding, the railroad siding at Brunswick, Georgia. And from there, they took the ferry boat across the inland strait to Jekyll Island and to the clubhouse. And for the next 9 days, these men sat around a table and hammered out all the important details of what eventually became the Federal Reserve System. And incidentally, if you visit that clubhouse today, you can walk down to the end of the one corridor there, and on a door is a brass plaque. And it says, "In this room, the Federal Reserve System was created." When they were done, they got back on board the train, back to New York, and disappeared. And for quite a few years after that, these men denied that any such meeting ever took place. It wasn't until after the Federal Reserve was firmly established that only then did they begin to talk openly about it. They wrote books on it. One of them wrote a magazine article, and they gave interviews to newspaper reporters. And so now, many years later, it's possible for us to go to the public record and find in print detailed descriptions of what happened at that meeting. Well, who were these men? The first one I've already mentioned, the one with the railroad car, Senator Nelson Aldrich, who was the Republican whip in the Senate. He was also chairman of the National Monetary Commission, which was that special committee of Congress which was created for the purpose of proposing legislation which was to reform banking. That was the idea. Banking needed reform. And the American people were greatly concerned in those days over things that were going on in the banking industry. People were losing their money in the banks because they weren't keeping their promises to hold their deposits in reserve. There were runs on the bank, and the banks couldn't pay the people back. But most of all, they were concerned over the concentration of financial power that was in the hands of a small group of very powerful and large banks in New York on Wall Street. This is what they called the money trust. That was the name. And it was a very popular expression in the newspapers. And quite a few politicians were elected to office on their campaign promise to break the grip of the money trust. President Wilson was one of those politicians, by the way. So that was the purpose of the National Monetary Commission, which was to propose legislation, which eventually became the Federal Reserve Act, to break the grip of the money trust over the financial markets of America. Aldrich was a business associate of J.P. Morgan. He was the father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller, Jr.
I want y'all to peep how he already mentioned the senator and he already mentioned a president. Now, y'all know who J.P. Morgan is. Y'all have heard about the Rockefellers and much more. And like I said before, y'all do your own research. Y'all see how deep the rabbit hole goes. So for those of y'all that be like, oh, yo, I feel like it's a distraction. No, y'all not wrong. It is. While all this was happening and everybody was focused on just that, the wildfires and all this stuff, they were doing things. They were already having these meetings. They're secret. We're not supposed to know about them until they get exposed. But guess what? The media should have been told us whatever they, caught a hold of, but they didn't. But the media outlets in other countries told them countries was what happening over here. We just didn't really know.
Which means, of course, that eventually he became the grandfather of Nelson Rockefeller, our former vice president. You remember his full name was Nelson Aldrich Rockefeller. So he derived his middle name from his famous grandfather. The second person at the meeting was Abraham Piatt Andrew, who was Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. He later became a congressman, but he was very prominent in banking circles. Frank Vanderlip was there. He was the president of the National City Bank of New York, which was the largest and the most powerful of all the banks in the country, representing the financial interests of William Rockefeller and the international investment firm of Kuhn, Loeb and Company. Henry Davison was there. He was the senior partner of the J.P. Morgan Company. Charles Norton was present. He was the president of the First National Bank of New York, which was another one of the giants. Also, there was Benjamin Strong, who was the head of J.P. Morgan's Bankers Trust Company. And incidentally, 3 years later, when the Federal Reserve System was finally created, he became the first head of the system. And finally, there was Paul Warburg, who was probably the most important of all the men there because of his knowledge of banking as it was practiced in Europe. Paul Warburg was born in Germany. He eventually became a naturalized American citizen. He was a partner in Kuhn, Loeb and Company. He was a representative of the Rothschild banking dynasty in England and France. And through all the years of his banking in America, he remained in very close contact with his brother, Max Warburg, who was the head of the Warburg Banking Consortium in Germany and the Netherlands. Paul Warburg was one of the wealthiest men in the world. And those of you who are Little Orphan Annie fans, you'll remember Daddy Warbucks. Well, Paul Warburg was the real Daddy Warbucks, after whom that character was.
Now, did y'all hear what he said? How all these people, are tied up to each other? What's happening? I wonder if people, have finally figured out what we have in common when the Titanic sank, then and now. What do we have in common? What's going on? What's happening?
Named. And everyone at the time knew it. I have his photograph in the book. If you'd like to compare his picture to the drawing rendition of Daddy Warbucks, you'll see the similarity between Warbucks and Warburg. And also, while we're on the subject of cartoon characters, anyone who's played Monopoly will remember the drawing of the capitalist with the handlebar mustache and the cigar. That's J.P. Morgan. Those are the 7 men who were on.
Y'all woke yet? And for those of y'all that didn't know, just in case y'all just learning, well, listen, a lot of us knew this. I found this out a couple years back. I was like, get the out of here. J.P. Morgan was the man who built the Titanic, and he also is the little character on the Monopoly dude. That's him, the little Monopoly dude, J.P. Morgan. For those of y'all that didn't know.
On Jekyll Island, and as incredible as it may seem, they represented approximately 1/4 of the wealth of the entire world. And these are the men photographed in the book. If you'd like to compare his picture to the drawing rendition of Daddy Warbucks, you'll see the similarity between Warbucks and Warburg. And also, while we're on the subject of cartoon characters, anyone who's played Monopoly will remember the drawing of the capitalist with the handlebar mustache and the cigar. That's J.P. Morgan. Those are the 7 men who were on Jekyll Island. And as incredible as it may seem, they represented approximately 1/4 of the wealth of the entire world. And these are the men that sat around a table on Jekyll Island and created the Federal Reserve System. What's going on here? Should arouse our curiosity a little bit. It didn't just happen. What's the big deal here? What's wrong with a group of bankers getting together in private and talking about banking or banking legislation? And the answer to that question is provided by Vanderlip himself in the same article. He said, if it were to be exposed publicly that our particular group had got together and written a banking bill, that bill would have no chance whatever of passage by Congress. Why not? Because the purpose of the bill was to break the grip of the money trust. And ladies and gentlemen, it was written by the money trust.
Y'all hear what he said? Passing a bill. Passing the bill. So y'all want to find out what bills are trying to be passed in 2023? It's real easy. We just Google it.
It's as simple as that. Had that fact been known from the very beginning, the public would never have accepted it as a means of breaking the grip over the money trust. And we would never have had a Federal Reserve System because the scam would have been exposed from the beginning. This was like having the fox build the hen house and install the security system.
Oh my.
So there is a primary reason for the secrecy. And it's a fact that most Americans have not even considered, that there might have been some kind of deception, massive deception at the very inception of the Federal Reserve System, and for a very good reason. But there's more to it than that, a lot more than that.
Tell us.
Consider the composition of this group and the financial powers they represented. Is there anything strange about that mixture? Here we had the Rockefellers, we had the Morgans, Kuhn Loeb and Company, the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, all in one room for 9 days plus 2 days on the train, coming to an agreement. What's going on here? Anything strange about that mixture? Well, ladies and gentlemen, these were competitors. These were the giants in the field which prior to this period had been beating their heads against each other for dominance.
Competitors, giants. Y'all still not putting it together?
In the marketplace, for dominance in the financial markets of the world, not only New York, but Paris and London, everywhere. Competitors. This is extremely significant because it happened at precisely that point of American history when business was undergoing a major ideological transition. Prior to this period, America had grown and prospered and surpassed all the countries of Europe as an industrial and economic power because it adhered to the principle of free enterprise competition. And it was in this period that a rapid transition was taking place to the concept of monopoly and cartel. Going back, in fact, to the old world concept, which had held Europe back for all these years. Monopolies.
Kind of like what we're living right now, right? If y'all look at the monopoly board and look at our cities, states, and everything, how we live in, the presidents, the senators, and all that, we're kind of like in that monopoly board, aren't we? People gonna say, no, you tripping, but listen, look at it. Pay attention, do your research.
And cartels were becoming the order of the day in America. It was John D. Rockefeller the first who said it. He said, competition is a sin. He believed it. All of his biographers quote him on that one, by the way. And he and others of these industrialists of the period were devoting all of their time to the elimination of competition. They did not believe in free enterprise competition at all. They knew that the road to riches and power was through the elimination of their competition. And if they couldn't beat their competition out, then they tried to buy them up. If that didn't work, they joined with them in a shared monopoly, and that is a cartel, a shared monopoly. Perhaps I should define that word in more detail so at least you'll know what I'm talking about when I use the word. A cartel is a group of independently owned businesses which come together for the purpose of reducing or eliminating competition between themselves so that they can enhance their profit margins or secure their position in the marketplace. And they do this by price fixing. We won't compete on price. Or they divide up geographical markets or products and services. For example, if we were forming a cartel here, I might.
I'm gonna rewind him back so y'all can get the whole definition. But basically, inflation, everything, the market, everything, cryptos, money. This is what it's all about. And guess who are the casualties? Us. Whether we agree or not, they're going to still have their secret meetings. And listen, it's time to bring back what Martin Luther King did, and it's time to start boycotting to get our right. Listen, we're free slaves. Let's put it like that. They accomplished something, and we were supposed to finish it. And a lot of us is the fuck sleep, and we need to wake the fuck up. But guess what? We can't wake them up if they don't want to be woke. So for those, again, that are the fuck sleep, stay the fuck in bed.
Competition is a sin. He believed it. All of his biographers quote him on that one, by the way. And he and others of these industrialists of the period were devoting all of their time to the elimination of competition. They did not believe in free enterprise competition at all. They knew that the road to riches and power was through the elimination of their competition. And if they couldn't beat their competition out, then they tried to buy them up. If that didn't work, they joined with them in a shared monopoly, and that is a cartel, a shared monopoly. Perhaps I should define that word in more detail, so at least you'll know what I'm talking about when I use the word. A cartel is a group of independently owned businesses which come together for the purpose of reducing or eliminating competition between themselves so that they can enhance their profit margins or secure their position in the marketplace. And they do this by price fixing. We won't compete on price. Or they divide up geographical markets or products and services. For example, if we were forming a cartel here, I might say, well, I get the North and you get the South. We won't compete. Or I might insist that I get to produce the gizmo, but you can produce the widget. And we won't compete. Or we'll share patents and processes. We won't compete. And every time we agree to eliminate one area of competition between ourselves, we move closer and closer together until finally we are as one industry insofar as the marketplace is concerned, even though our component parts are independently owned. And that is a cartel. And so that enhances.
And that's what they don't want, is us to be united, for us to be one, for us to fight back, for us to stand up. They want us to be in a little corner, like little scared chickens, like real shit, like some pussycats.
Enhances our profits. We can get more for our products and services than we could in the arena of free enterprise competition. And of course, the other side of that coin is that the public pays more for those products or services than they would otherwise. And that is just as true in a banking cartel as it is in any other kind of cartel. And the amazing fact emerges that when you study this period, that for the 15 years before the meeting on Jekyll Island, these groupings of which we're speaking had come together increasingly in joint ventures. They were learning how to avoid competition between themselves. They knew they couldn't knock each other out. They had tried that. It was too costly. Now it was time to come together. And what happened on Jekyll Island is that they formed a banking cartel, and they called it the Federal Reserve System. An amazing fact that all these years we've had something which most people have thought was a government operation of some kind or another. We were told it was a creation to protect the people, to stabilize the economy, and it's a cartel. And the purpose of a cartel is to enhance the profit structure of the members of the cartel. Period.
Period. Like he said, like, is y'all waking up? All this is about money, is about power. Who's going to be in charge of what, and who could do what? Who's better at this than the other? Like, and if they have to eliminate who the hell is in the way, get rid of the ops, as y'all call it.
So 1910, William Howard Taft was president, and the 6 gentlemen who were there, Nelson Aldrich, Republican whip in the Senate, Henry Davison, senior partner of J.P. Morgan, A. Piatt Andrew, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, Frank Vanderlip, President of National City Bank of New York, Benjamin Strong of J.P. Morgan, and Paul Warburg, partner representing the Rothschilds and Warburgs in Europe. And you say that in here that they represented essentially 1/4 of the entire wealth of the world.
Of the entire world. An incredible statement. That's not my appraisal, but that was the opinion of the
journalists at the time who were writing about these people, not in connection with the Federal Reserve, but they were prominent bankers, and they talked about the Jekyll Island group, for example, and then these bankers in particular, and the investment houses of Kuhn, Loeb and Company, and so forth. But they said these men represented directly through the power that they held in their own hands, and indirectly through the money that was concentrated in the investment firms, like the insurance companies and the banking companies. Put it all together, they said it was 1/4 of the wealth of the entire world. And that concentration of wealth has only increased since then.
Well, you asked the question in your book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, what is the Federal Reserve, and what is your answer?
Well, what it is, it's a cartel. It's not a government agency. It has the appearance of it being a government agency, and they went to great lengths to give it that facade. It does have the power of government because Congress voted to give the power of enforcement to it. But in its essence, underneath it, it's a cartel. It's nothing different than a banana cartel or an oil cartel or sugar cartel. It happens to be a banking cartel. They got together, they drew up the rules and regulations for their own industry, to self-regulate their own industry is what cartels do. And then they sent it to Congress, and they took off the label at the top that said banking cartel, and they erased that, and they said Federal Reserve Act. Congress passed it into law, and that's why we think it's a government agency, is because if you don't obey the rules that they set down for their own industry, you go to prison. And so it looks like a government agency. But basically, the answer to your question is it's a banking cartel.
While there's been some movements to combat this globalist totalitarian network, which has not only financed communist revolutions around the world, such as in Russia, China, and more recently in South Africa, which were all triggered by engineered social uprisings aimed to remove existing power structures using class warfare and amplifying socioeconomic and racial tensions enforced by a banker-controlled media. We can see the same pattern played out in America today, where manufactured civil unrest is used to erase history and promote cultural Marxism, in a nation which already promotes falsehoods in schools, starting from its name, which was not really based on the explorer Amerigo Vespucci, whose authentic name was actually Alberigo Vespucci, who only changed his name to Amerigo after his voyages to the Americas. In other words, Amerigo came from America and not the other way around. Not only was there an existing tribe in Nicaragua called Americ, whose root word was the ancient name for the land used by the natives of Peru, also known to the Maya civilization and attributed to the great feathered serpent creator deity, which they called Kukulkan, a deity which also had an equivalent by the Aztec civilization. According to Manly P. Hall, in his book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, quote, "These children of the sun adored the plumed serpent, who was the messenger of the sun. He was the god Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, Gucamat in Quiche, and in Peru he was called Amaru. From the latter name comes our word America. Amaruca is, literally translated, land of the plumed serpent. The priests of this flying dragon, from their chief center, they once ruled both Americas. One of their strong centers was Guatemala, and of their order was the author of the book called Popol Vuh. Many Mesoamerican and Native Indian tribes also record in their oral traditions encounters and conflicts with giants, or at least very...
Yo, do y'all notice how they bringing up the tribes and everything in this? Like, this goes far back, guys. I want y'all to pay attention and listen, like, how far back it goes, how many loopholes. Like, listen, this shit is crazy. This nigga just mentioned the Aztec tribe and all that. It's crazy. I could have sworn, I'm about to go back, I could have sworn he mentioned the Arawak. I'm gonna see what he just said. Let me see. I gotta listen a little better because I was at the store when he was saying this. Let's go back a little bit. He took the joint back.
Promote cultural Marxism. In a nation which already promotes falsehoods in schools, starting from its name, which was not really based on the explorer Amerigo Vespucci, whose authentic name was actually Alberigo Vespucci, who only changed his name to Amerigo after his voyages to the Americas. In other words, Amerigo came from America and not the other way around. Not only was there an existing tribe in Nicaragua called Americ, whose root word was the ancient name for the land used by the natives of Peru, also known to the Maya civilization and attributed to the great feathered serpent creator deity, which they called Kukulkan, a deity which also had an equivalent by the Aztec civilization. According to Manly P. Hall, in his book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, quote, "These children of the sun adored the plumed serpent, who was the messenger of the sun. He was the god Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, Gucamet in Quiche, and in Peru he was called Amaru. From the latter name comes our word America. Amaruca is, literally translated, land of the plumed serpent. The priests of this flying dragon..."
You know where I heard them mention the Ku Klux Klan at? I think it was the Black Panther. I think the mermaids, when they popped up on that last movie, they mentioned something about the Ku Klux Klan. And I've heard it in other places. I think I was, I might have checked. I think I was, I've heard the Ku Klux Klan. Where the fuck was it?
Dragon. From their chief center, they once ruled both Americas. One of their strong centers was Guatemala, and of their order was the author of the book called Popol Vuh. Many Mesoamerican and Native Indian tribes also record in their oral traditions encounters and conflicts with giants, or at least very tall people in the past. I also covered this topic in several videos, showing documentation regarding many discoveries of giant skeletons, which have been published in newspapers, and then seemingly forgotten to history, except for mythology or mentions of giants in the Bible. In many biblical interpretations, the serpent is synonymous with Lucifer, the fallen angel thrown down by God, which literally translates to light bearer, a symbol which can be found in many parts of the ancient pre-Christian world. In his book, The Occult Connection to the Hidden Race, author Ken Hoodall proposes that, quote, "Then perhaps the land of the plumed serpent may also be known as the land of Lucifer," concluding that America means the land of Lucifer. While this interpretation may sound like a real stretch for many, it's an interesting concept when considered from the perspective of an interview that I recently stumbled upon, suggested to me by one of my subscribers, which uncovered some interesting details regarding the secretive meeting on Jekyll Island and events that led up to the creation of the Federal Reserve. The gentleman being interviewed is Tim Bentz, and the host of the show is Rob Skiba, from a broadcast on Blog Talk Radio titled Canaanite Altars and the Federal Reserve. I'll leave a link to the full interview in the description, but now let's listen to a brief excerpt, and I'll leave it to the listener to draw.
For those of you that want to see the link to that video that he's talking about, y'all can check it on the link to this video that's at the description box at the bottom. Y'all can click on the link to this video, and then on his actual video, the link to the video that he's talking about is on there.
Draw their own conclusions.
I knew something about Jekyll Island. I had looked at some of the financial issues in the 80s and 90s. I was looking at some of the spiritual applications to financial things, but I really was not up to speed on the history of Jekyll Island. I had just heard it from something. I'd not even read, the book that's called The Creature of Jekyll Island. I'd not even read that book, but I was aware of something about Jekyll Island and financial.
Blessings, Sylvie on the go. Blessings, welcome to the channel. I'm not sure if I have any mods on here where they can share your link, but I hope you enjoy the content, and we're just here to spread awareness. Thank you so much for the support.
Financial stuff. So I went in my brother's house, got my computer out, and I just, got on the internet and typed in Jekyll Island. And it's like, what's going on with Jekyll Island? And so I discovered when I got online that the Jekyll Island Club, which was this historical, multi-millionaires country club that had been built in the turn of the century, it had just been remodeled and reopened. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. When I got to the hotel, it was about 9 o'clock at night. And so I went in the restaurant and had a good meal and went to my room and got some rest. And the next morning I went down for breakfast, and a different lady was at the desk, but she had a note for me and said that I had an appointment arranged with the museum director, and that he was blocking out most of the day to spend with me. So I had my breakfast, and then when I went over to meet with him. So I go meet with the museum gentleman. His name is John, and when I go meet with him, I just introduced myself. I told him a little bit about who I was and what I do. We started talking. He was, of course, started out talking about the financial stuff, because this Jekyll Island is where the Federal Reserve banking system was birthed and conceived. And at one time, when it was functioning in the 1900s up to the 20s and 30s, some say 1/3, some say 2/3 of the world's wealth would vacation on that island. It was the highest conglomeration of wealth in a single place very often anywhere in the world back in the turn of the century. So it just seems like a little island that's not anything significant at all now, but it's amazing to see the financial side of the history of that spot. And so I'm sitting there looking at some of the things that he's telling, and just thinking about some of the things he's telling me. We went out and walked around, and he showed me some of the cottages that had been restored, and the club itself, and the tennis courts, and they had a pier where the boats would come up, and he's just kind of showing me the grounds, and then we go to the museum. And he's talking a lot about the financial stuff and the guys that built it, and each cottage was, marked and named. Some of them had been restored, some of them didn't exist anymore, but they had like a sign that this is where this one was, and that one was built by J.P. Morgan, that one was Rockefeller's, and that one was just they had each one of them named. Well, they're all kind of native.
I want to pause it right here real quick and let y'all know. I'm also going to show y'all a little bit of the history of Jekyll Island. I think they spoke about it a little bit. I think it's on the first live I did yesterday, part 1 to this live. And for those of y'all that don't know, Jekyll Island is an island where they had a lot of slaves. I think at one point they ended up killing all the slaves that they had in there. I think to this day is an island where they still got slaves. And to me, my biggest question is, why would these men go to that island specifically, to have these secret meetings as they do? I don't know if anybody, could, finish putting all the puzzles together. Let us surely know. Like, leave y'all comments what y'all think, how y'all feel. Make sure y'all hit, for those of you that are coming in, make sure y'all smash that like button for Shorty. Share her video, help her get into the algorithm, help her spread all the awareness that she's going to spread. We're going to be talking about things like this and much more.
Names. And then they're all, got some kind of plaque on who the financial mogul was that had built them. And they're not really elaborate, luxurious mansions. They're just simple cottages for the most part, which was kind of interesting to know that the richest people in the world built them, and they were very low key and almost like a cabin in the woods instead of a luxurious house like you'd expect. And they all had Indian names. So I started asking him about the Indian history of the island, and he lit up. he just was like, that's what he really wanted to talk about because he loved the Indian history. And so he takes me back to the museum, and he said, we got a lot of stuff on the Indians. He said this was actually like the government main community for a tribe of Indians that don't exist anymore. That tribe was called the Timucas. And I said, well, that's interesting. My name's Tim. And anyway, I didn't know anything about the Timucas. I'm from Oklahoma. I've learned a lot of Native history, and I have some Native bloodline, but I did not know anything about the Timucas. So I just asked him, please tell me everything that you can tell me about them. There's something about the natives that I feel like I need to know. So he said, well, the Jekyll Island Club was actually built on top of everything that the Indians had. So they just kind of wiped the village out and built the club on top of it. So wherever the chief's house was, there was.
Now, y'all see how they wiped the village out at one point? Like, yo, the story is deep when it comes to Jekyll Island. It's very deep. Like, are these men that are coming to this island having secret meetings or racist as hell? Yo, I swear. In my opinion, but I'm not even going to use the word racist. For the simple fact that, listen, a lot of us is racist amongst ourselves, and that we can't catch the grip of it. I can't even talk shit about the white man until we start fucking taking the grip of ourselves. Like, it's just crazy because we're building more 2 to 3 feet caskets now for our babies than what we was back then. No more unity. We got to come together to end all this bullshit. But you know what? Like I say, for those that are the fuck sleep, stay the fuck in bed. Once again.
The cottage now, wherever the council house was, there was now the Jekyll Island Hotel. And he said everything that's built and visible today is actually sitting right on top of something that was significant in the Indian village when it existed. So he said the fact that this whole place had to go into ruins and then be rebuilt and become an archaeological state park, he said it's actually helped us identify the Native history because the club itself had almost erased that. And so I said, well, let's look at the museum. I want to see some of the Indian stuff. So we're looking at arrowheads and spear tips and, just artifacts that they had found and pottery shards and things and seashells that they had had. And he's showing me all their stuff in the museum. He shows me some fragments of a weapon that was like an unusual bow. And when I say unusual, I mean that it was like a double curved bow. And that was a very unusual shape of the bow for a native tribe. I had never seen that shape before with an American Indian tribe. And I've seen a lot of bows and arrows. So I asked him, I said, this seems unusual. I've not seen this before. In Oklahoma, every native tribe, the bows was like a single bow or just a single curve. I said, this is quite extraordinary, especially as far back as this tribe was. So he said, yeah, we found a lot of weapon type artifacts that we've not seen with other tribes. And I said, well, how do you know these were Native Americans? Maybe they were from somewhere else. He said, oh, no. They were the Timucas because they're well established along the Florida and Georgia coast. And he said, we got a lot of stuff in 3 or 4 states about them. And they were quite prolific at one time. So he said, we know they're Native Americans.
So basically what they're trying to say is that they took over this island and claimed it as theirs. That's what they're trying to say. They got rid of the whole tribe. They cleared it out. They swiped them clean. They killed them all and just took over the village and claimed it. That's probably why they say that there's myths. That's why probably the myths and them theories and them what people are thinking and saying, them stories that are going around about the island being cursed, it probably could be true. Like it was owned by a tribe way before.
I said, well, all right, what else you got? He said, well, we got some skeletons. He said, you want to see the bones? And I said, well, yeah. That sounds, don't get to see a skeleton very often. I said, are they where we can actually see them, or are they buried? He said, no, they're visible. So they had a burial site that they had been very respectful for when they built the museum. When they found a burial site, they didn't move the bones. They left them where they were, and they just uncovered them to where they were visible, and then they built the museum on top of it. They did basically the same thing with the museum that the Jekyll Island guys had done with their houses. They put a piece of plexiglass over the burial site so you could see it, but they were still trying to respect where the bones were and not move them. And so I'm looking at 4 skeletons of the Timucua chiefs. And they knew they were chiefs just from different things that were buried with them. So all of a sudden I look and I realize, man, these guys are really tall. And I commented to the guy that, how tall are these guys? They look unusually large. And he said, yeah, they're all about 8 or 8.5 foot tall. I thought, well, that doesn't seem like a normal Native American, especially the tribes that I'm familiar with. He said all the Timucuas were unusually tall, even the women. And he said we found other skeletons and parts of bones out in the grounds, and he said we've got pretty good evidence that nearly all of them were extraordinarily tall. And I said, well, what is how do you explain that in relation to other tribes on the Atlantic coast who were not? He said, I don't know. It is an unusual anomaly. He said, oh, by the way, I've got a painting that you might want to see. It's actually the copy of the original. We've got it under lock and key. But he said, I got a painting that actually shows the Indians from a group of French colonists that came to the United States before it was the U.S. This was right after Columbus. He said that
basically they vanished everybody on this island and, preserved everything that they found and put it inside a museum that they built themselves, or probably had the slaves build. I'm sorry to say it.
It was the first colony of French folks that came over to try to establish a colony on the coast. And he said they landed in Jekyll Island and they had some interaction with these Indians. And then they got so appalled by what they saw and witnessed that they fled at night and ended up in San Augustine, Florida, and established that city. So I said, were they the Huguenots who were the French group that established San Augustine? He said, yes. I said, well, I'd like to see that painting then. So he pulls that out. I'm looking at it, and it shows the Indians in all their regalia, and they're dancing around and having some kind of ceremony, and it's got the fire, and it's a typical, either they're having a party or they're having a war scene, and it has some things with the weapons. So I said, gosh, this has got some weapons in it that clearly validates the archaeology that they found. And then I see an altar. And I'm going, I don't know of a Native American tribe anywhere in the country. I know some that had log houses or high places or worshipped, nature in some way, or had totem poles or that kind of stuff. But this one has a stone altar, and it looks a whole lot like the one that I had dealt with in the Middle East. And I'm looking at the picture, and I'm going, is this an altar? Is this stone like something they're sacrificing on? Because this guy's holding babies in his hands in this picture. He said, yeah, they're cutting those babies, they're hacking those babies up in that painting. And so when you look at the details, 2 of the shamans or chiefs are holding a baby up by the ankles, and they're whacking their heads off and spilling the blood on this altar. And I'm like, sir, I don't want to be disrespectful of your training and archaeological understanding and history, but
it's crazy. Like I said, the history is deep. I know that a lot of people listen, they don't want to hear about this, but listen, this is the history. This is what happened. before, you know, the people that took over Jekyll Island, before the secret meetings and everything. This is the history of Jekyll Island, and it all goes hand in hand. And it's crazy how the people that moved in to make these clubhouses, these, you know, hotels and these rooms and all this stuff are the same people that wiped out the Indians that lived at one point in this village. So, hey, if it's cursed, probably, maybe, I don't know. That could be a myth. That could be a theory. That could be a story. It could be, listen, at the end of the day, I bring this out here to bring awareness. I know a lot of y'all ain't going to give a fuck about it, but these are topics that do need to be talked about. Right now, everybody's so confused about what's going on with the submarine and everything. Listen, the shorty's putting it all out at the table for y'all. You listen, I want to thank everybody that's rocking out with me, that's listening, that y'all more than welcome to come up. Like I said, it's an open panel. The link is right there pinned. I'm playing the documentary, giving my reaction, and this is what I think. Like I said, this is why I say that the people that went under, my condolences to their family. I don't even know if their family has a part. They know about it. They're a part of it, or what the heck is going on. As y'all can see, this goes all the way back to J.P. Morgan, the Rockefellers, and much more. Y'all do your own research. When it comes to this era, y'all see who are the people that are in charge of it now, who are the ones that are going to these secret meetings, and much more. So all we got to do is just listen. So all of y'all that are rocking out with me, thank you so much, because like I said, y'all don't have to be here, but y'all chose to be here with a shorty and bring awareness. And that's what I'm trying to do. So thank y'all so much. But listen to what's happening. This is actually a real interview that happened to the guy that did the documentary on this village on Jekyll Island, where they're actually having these secret meetings.
I don't know of any native tribe that did what I'm seeing here, unless it was an act of war. And this is really, really unusual. And I've seen this type of scene with artifacts over in the Middle East. And I've seen weapons like this over in the Middle East. I said, are you sure this is Native Americans and not some kind of colony that came from over there? And he was convinced they were Native. And I said, well, I'd like to show you some things on a few websites that identify artifacts in the Middle East countries, and especially Egypt and Israel and Syria and Jordan area, and some of those spots where there's some of these ancient groups. And I said, this type of altar, this type of religious ceremony, and some of these weapons, I've seen them before over there. Well, he was quite interested in that because he loves Native American history, but he's starting to question, maybe I need to dig into this more. That was his comment. So I said, at that point, then I thought, I believe this is why I'm here. I needed to see this and hear about this. At this point, I'm not that concerned about the financial stuff anymore. I'm wanting to know, where is this altar? And so I asked him, I said, can you take me to this altar? I often pray over these things, and it's very beneficial for the land and for the country and for the people. Can I go to this altar and see it? He said, I can take you to the altar, but you can't see it. And I said, why can't I see it? Is it buried? He said, no, it's not buried, but it has a house built on top of it. I said, who would be crazy enough to build their house on top of a blood sacrifice altar? He said, well, Rockefeller was. So, nice. I just okay. Can we go there? And he said, yeah, it's just a short walk. Come on. And we've actually, had already walked by it. So he said, I've got the keys. He said, normally nobody can go in. The way these things are set up, they're historical homes now. The state of Georgia owns the park. They lease out to another group, the hotel, to run, but the houses are maintained on the National Historical Register, and they're part of the state park. So you can't go in any of them without a guided tour or permission, but you can go look in the windows and walk on the porches and walk all around them. And they're set up inside just like they were when they were actually being used back in the 20s and earlier. So we go over there, and he's got the keys, though. So we go into the house, and he takes me into the parlor, and he says, well, I know you're
But y'all peep how he mentioned the Rockefellers again, even though he's talking about the tribe and everything. But it's crazy, though. He has a good question. Who would be crazy enough to build a house, cottage, anything on top of a blood sacrifice altar?
the praying guy, so you probably would like to have a little time to pray. He said, you're standing right on top of the altar right now. This is the room that is built on top of it. He said, I'm just going to go over here and sit down for a few minutes and read the newspaper, and I'll let you pray and do whatever you need to do.
Now, this parlor, that's where those guys, J.P. Morgan and all those guys, actually conceived of the Federal Reserve, right? Right over that altar.
That's exactly right. It's the room that they were sitting in when they drew up the entire legislation and plan.
So basically, everything was built on top of that altar right there on Jekyll Island. All this happened. Jekyll Island is located somewhere in Atlanta. I forgot where it was. Right now, I'm just like, damn. Like, they were that bold. They had their cojones were that huge. Real shit. Like, damn.
Plan to pass it that became the Federal Reserve Act.
Wow.
So this was the conception of the Federal Reserve banking system on the parlor, sitting on top of a blood sacrifice altar.
Where babies were sacrificed.
Yes. And so all of a sudden it's like, wow, no wonder our banking system has so much corruption in it, even when people want to do the right thing, you know.
No kidding.
And so, just being a banker is not an easy job, but it's like, not all of them are bad guys.
The whole system was built on corruption. It was built on corruption. It's not going to really go nowhere.
But it's like, wow. And that was not what our founders set up. That took over. It usurped the authority of the way our founding fathers suggested that we bank as a country. And even the way it was passed had a lot of, things that didn't seem right about it. But the idea that it was conceived like this, I'm going, this is not just a bunch of wealthy guys that got away for a vacation and came up with a profitable business plan. This has got something diabolical, something occultic about it, something evil that's wrapped up with it.
Yeah.
And so even if it had been a good idea and something beneficial for the country, which many would argue that it was, this demonic power must have gotten into it, because they didn't just create a bank, they created a banking system that every one of us have become subject to. So think about this. We've got a piece of money that wouldn't be of any value whatsoever if we didn't attribute value to it. Our dollars are only worth something because they're measured against something else. And the problem worldwide is every nation today, every nation is operating with fiat currency, and we're the ones that taught them how to do it. The change that the Federal Reserve did was not just to change the facial picture on the money. What they did is they took the right that our Constitution gave to the Treasury Department to print the money and set the value thereof. And they said, let us print it for you, and then we'll loan it back to you. Right. Think about the stupidity of that. If you just think wisely, I'm already making something with my own hands, and then somebody else comes to me and says, let me make that for you, and then I'll loan it back to you.
At interest.
Why would I do that? It's mine to start with. I don't need you to print it for me and then charge me interest to have it. But that's what we did. We set that up on a national scale. And where was the voice of the righteous when that happened? Why was there not a public outcry? It forces us to have debt or we have no economy.
Yeah.
You cannot buy anything in this country without a debt being created, because if you buy something, that's the reason they print a dollar. So
right.
You buy a house and you ask for a loan, they print the money so they can give you the loan. That creates debt whether you are borrowing or not. Every sale, every transaction, every exchange has to create a debt now to be done. So that is not necessary, but it is something we chose to allow.
And unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, the show cut off right about this point in the broadcast.
My name is Robert Sepper. I'm an anthropologist. My published work is
Shout out to Robert Shepard for bringing out that, documentary on the whole history of Jekyll Island, a little summary of the secret meetings. He brought a little bit of everything. So those of y'all that missed it, y'all can catch the replay from the beginning of this live. Y'all can also catch the replay on part 1. But let's talk about it. Like, what do y'all think? How do y'all feel? Do y'all think it's a distraction? To me, in my opinion, I believe it is a distraction. Let me get off of this real quick. And let's share over here. Let's go. Share the screen. Let me see. When we type in what major events are occurring in 2023, what do they have here? June 25th, 2023, Guatemalan general election. July 23, 2023, Spanish general election. August 23rd, 2023. These are all the days that, all these bills are supposed to be passed. August 23rd, 2023, Zimbabwean, whatever, general election. September 8th to October 28th, 2023, Rugby World Cup in France. Okay. October 14th, 2023, New Zealand general election. October 22nd, 2023, Argentine general election. Okay, nothing major. What big events happened in January 2023? Let me see. Another mass shooting in California leaves 10 people dead. Tuesday, January 24, 2023, a mass shooting at 2 locations in the coastal northern California city left 7 people dead. The shooter was apprehended after he drove into the parking lot of the police station. They got what era will 2023 be? 2023 CE refers to the year 2023 in Common Era. It is the same 2023 AD annual domain, i.e. 2023 years after the birth of Jesus Christ. Okay, why would y'all put this here? Y'all weirdos. We went too far. What major event happened in April 2023? Let me see. April current events, U.S. News page. Biden pays a visit to Mississippi town hit by a tornado. Former Arkansas Governor Hudson declares intention to run for president. Florida Senate has approved a 6-week abortion ban. Oh, shit. Brandon has approved a 6-week abortion ban. What happens if they have an abortion within them 6 weeks? That was in April? That already passed. Happened in July. What will happen in July 2023? Let me see. National Days on Monday, July 3rd, 2023. Explore worldwide events, festivals, funny, weird, and national days on this day. International Plastic Bag Free Day, National. Okay. Y'all, they ain't going to tell us yet. They're not going to tell us. Yep. So let's get off of that one. And let's go to see what bills. Let's see what bills are being passed right now in 2023. Let's see. We already know about that. Let's see. Most viewed bills. What bills and laws? Just leave it like that. Y'all gonna make me mute it because y'all playing music? Sorry, because I'm about to end this live soon. Let me see. What is the Restrict Act? The Restrict Act, S-686, is a proposed legislation that was first introduced in the United States Senate on March 7, 2023, to authorize the Secretary of Commerce to review and prohibit certain transactions between persons in the United States and foreign advisories and for other purposes. What's the other purposes, huh? Hey. Let's see. Hold on. I had to wait for them to ride with that music. Let's see what this is. Let me see. Introduced by Senator Mark Warner, the act proposes that the Secretary of Commerce be given the power to review business transactions involving certain information and communications technology products or services when they are connected to a foreign advisory of the United States and pose an undue and unacceptable risk to the national security of the United States or its citizens. Oh, okay. Okay, let's see the overview. The Restrict Act describes as a synthetic framework for addressing technology-based threats to the security and safety of Americans. It grants the Security Commerce the authority to review transactions by certain foreign entities who offer information and communication technology products and services in order to identify, investigate, and migrate unique and unacceptable risks to the national security of the United States or its citizens. This includes, but is not limited to, impact of the country's critical infrastructure and digital economy, sabotage or subversion of ICTS in the United States, interference and manipulation of the federal elections, undermining the democratic process to steer policy and regulatory decisions in favor of the strategic objectives of the foreign advisory to the determinant of the national security of the United States. The act applies to ICTS entities that are held in whole or in part by otherwise fall under the jurisdiction of the country or government that is designed under the act as a foreign advisory of the United States and has more than 1 million active users of units sold in the United States. The entitled initial text of the act classifies China, including Hong Kong and Macau, Cuba, Iran, and the Nicolas Maduro regime of Venezuela as foreign advisories. It would be unlawful for any person to violate any order or migration measure issued under the Restrict Act, and civil penalties up to $250,000 or twice the value of the transaction that served as the basis of the order, whichever greater. Criminal penalties up to 1 million or 20 years of imprisonment. Y'all trying to say that we can't buy from other countries now, and if they do, there'll be consequences? While it was not mentioned by name by its sponsor, the Restrict Act has been characterized as a means to potentially restrict or prohibit the Chinese-owned video sharing service TikTok. Oh, they trying to ban TikTok. So y'all passed it already. That's what this is for. Y'all trying to ban TikTok. So y'all passed the bill already. So it's called the Restrict Act. We're still using TikTok. I'm not gonna stop using TikTok. Shit, it's the only place we can go into and we could actually like expose these motherfuckers. Like they tripping. Let's see. What bills are still being no, we're not talking about that. Which state passed privacy laws that will take effect in 2023? The United States privacy laws in 2023, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Utah, and Virginia. In 2023, now consumer privacy laws will be effective in California, Colorado. Okay. Damn, what is the privacy law? What is y'all trying to do? In 2023, new consumer privacy laws will be effective in California, Colorado, Connecticut, Utah, and Virginia. These laws will come online throughout the year as follows. Virginia's law is effective and enforceable on January 1st, 2023. California amendments are effective on January 1st. I wonder why they call it amendments. Effective on January 1st, 2023, and enforceable on July 1st, 2023. Colorado's law is effective and enforceable on July 1st, 2023. See the difference there? They said amendments. Connecticut's law is effective and enforceable on July 1st, 2023. And Utah's law is effective and enforceable on December 31st. But damn, California. Where is it? California? Colorado. Is it Colorado? Let me see. Which one is it? California's amendments? What y'all fucking with the amendments now? Ooh, these are things that make you wonder, ain't it? Oh, wasn't sharing the screen. Let's share the screen so y'all can see what I'm seeing. Boom. Yo, this shit is crazy. Let's read a little bit. At the end of this article is a link of a summary chart comparing key components of the laws. Additionally, for a more in-depth discussion of California, Virginia, and Colorado's laws, review our prior article here. As an overview, the laws of each state share high-level similarities in consumer rights, but the various laws fall into three buckets. In Colorado, Connecticut, and Virginia's laws being closely related, Utah's law representing a slight division from those, and California is off on its own. It's important to note that the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, is currently in effect, but the comparisons below in the summary chart consider the California law after January 1st, the effective date of CCPA amendments adopted through the California. California, damn. Adapted through the California Privacy Rights Act. 1. Applicity. The Colorado, Connecticut, Virginia, and Utah law adapt terminology of European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, and apply to controllers defined to include persons that determine the purpose for and means of processing personal data, and that I conduct business or produce goods or services that are intentionally targeted to the state's residents, and either A, control or process personal data of more than 100,000 residents data per year. B, derive varying shares of total revenue from the sales personal data of at least 2,500,000 residents. Utah also includes a revenue threshold of 2,500 million or more. Like California, I think I said that number wrong. Fuck that shit. Because I'm mixing everything up right now. Here we go. Okay. Like California, Colorado, Connecticut, Virginia, and Utah all include exceptions for personal and business-to-business information, which is a major issue in California, given that these exceptions will sunset on January 1st, 2023, as we discussed briefly here. Notably, the states other than California exempt financial institutions subject to the federal Graham Leach whatever act of is spelled B-I. No, it's not even a B-I. I need my freaking computer back. B-L-I-L-E-Y, whatever that is. The Leach, whatever, Act of 1999, the GLBA. Okay, let's name it that. The GLBA. Y'all should have just said that from freaking gate. I should have read it. All right. At the entity level of California. Entity. Only data collected subject to the GLBA rather than the institution themselves are exempt from the CCPA. Y'all want to say here with these big words, huh? So, guys, the Privacy Act has changed in these states. I don't know if y'all know. For those that did know, shout out, y'all, because they're not really telling us about all this. The following are links to the text of legislation scheduled for consideration during the week of June 19, 2023. 15 new state laws are now in effect in 2023. What are the 15 new laws, guys? Hey, I'm sorry. I was clicking too much. I didn't mean to. All right, they're about to tell us the 15 new laws. No, I'm not signing in right now. I'm on a whole live. Do I have to sign in? No, because that's going to give my info. When the ball dropped at midnight on January 1st, 2023, hundreds of bills from the state legislatures across the country suddenly became laws as Americans were celebrating the beginning of a new year. While state laws can have effective dates throughout the year, January is a common time for new enforcement to start. The fresh batch of 2023 laws cover topics ranging from quirky to serious, with many addressing subjects that are dominating American discourse. All of them, however, will impact the applicable state citizens in some way, shape, or form. Below is a selection of interesting state laws in effect, featuring a variety of policy areas and spanning the major regions of the country, and what their implementation will mean for residents. Gun laws are relaxed in Alabama. Jaywalkers get a break in California. Damn. Abortion rights are expanded in California. Low-level marijuana convictions are cleared. Oh, that means y'all can walk around with Mary Jane and not, you can sit here and walk with that. That you're not in. I wouldn't suggest it though. But damn, for those of you out here that sit on y'all steps or like to walk around and think and have Mary Jane in your hands, y'all won't get. That's in Connecticut though. It's only in Connecticut. They can't do that to you in Philly either. And I think in New York, I'm not sure if it's still like that in New York. Safety protections are put in place for tenants in Florida. Pornography viewing has a new requirement in Louisiana. Millionaires have a new tax in Massachusetts. After voters approve the ballot in November, residents making an income of at least $1 million annually will see additional tax. Oh shit. Y'all need to look up these new laws. Homeless people face new challenges in Missouri. Minimum wage is hiked in Nebraska and other states. Voting is made easier in New York. Okay. That's what y'all passed. State of emergency have new hurdles in North Carolina. So guys, whatever state y'all from, I suggest y'all go look up y'all new laws. I'm about to look up the rest of mine because I know that while we were sleep distracted with the submarine, they slapped us with a couple here in Philly. Unemployment benefits are cut in Oklahoma. Salary become more transparent in Washington. So, damn. Oh, where am I at? I'm not on StreamYard no more. Nope, it took me out of StreamYard. Blessings, be encouraged with Maritza. Blessings. Well, guys, I just wanted to, bring awareness to everything that's happening. I want y'all to do your own research. What I did yesterday and today, doing part 1 and part 2 of this live, was to, give y'all a little stepstone, a little, startup for y'all to listen, go check this out, Y'all do your own research from there. Y'all can, check different links from different places and y'all can figure out what's actually happening. And for those of y'all, that missed this whole live, I know, a lot of y'all is going to catch the replay. But while we were asleep, this is one of the things that they was doing while we was all asleep. That's why I keep telling everybody, if y'all the fuck sleep, stay in bed. Let's see. So let's start off with him and end the video with explaining about what he's talking about. All right, guys?
got lost in a submarine, quietly in the shadow. While Americans have been distracted by a rich guy who got lost in a submarine, quietly in the shadows, U.S. regulators approved the sale of synthetic lab-grown meat to the American public. This is not a parody. This is not a joke. Let's get into it. In this article from the Associated Press titled, U.S. approves nation's first lab-grown meat, chicken made from animal cells, it talks about how 2 California companies got the approval to sell this shit to us. So I'm thinking to myself, who could be that powerful to convince U.S. regulators to sell us synthetic lab-grown meat? And it's none other than our good buddy, Billy Boy Blue, who's been the primary investor in companies that are trying out different synthetic meats for us to enjoy. He's also one of the majority shareholders in Impossible Meats. So I'm thinking, this guy's just a computer wizard. He's not a nutritionist. He's not a scientist.
Facts. Facts, Maritza. Facts. They are. The reason I say facts with you and I'm agreeing with you 100% on this is because, listen, yo, our bodies are supposed to consume certain nutritions, right? In reality, we're not even supposed to be consuming the meats that we consume. Like, people out here eating the swine, which I consider the pig, you know, for those of y'all that don't know. People out here eating, you know, beef and eating chicken and all that. We're not really supposed to be eating none of that. Our nutrition comes from the fruits, the vegetables, and all that. Like, we could get H3O by squeezing a watermelon, by squeezing any type of melon, a mango, strawberries. I could just keep going by the fruits and vegetables you can get H3O from. And in reality, that's how we're supposed to survive. If we eat any type of meat, I think it's supposed to be 2 types of fish, and I can't really remember the name of it. I think it's damn, I was so mad when I found out. Yo, I'm supposed to be sitting here eating Ariel's best friend. Like, in reality, like, yeah, it sounds messed up, yo. Like, when I was little, this is why I wouldn't eat certain meats, yo. Real shit. Like, it took a lot for me to start eating meats, but listen, I have to sit here and eat flounder. Like, a lot of us are supposed to eat flounder, and I forgot what the second fish was, right? But that and lamb. Other than that, we're not supposed to eat any other type of meats. But we're in this era, we're supposed to. No, it's not Nemo. It's flounder. It's flounder. And I think Nemo is not a flounder. We don't eat Nemo. It's what's her name? Dory. Dory is like a flounder. It's not Nemo. It's Dory. Yeah, I know my Disney stuff. I'm a Disney baby. I'm a Disney baby. Shit, I grew up on all the Disney movies, yo. I swear to God, like, and all the Nickelodeon shows, all that. I grew up on that. Yeah. Like, I ain't missed one episode, one movie. I even watched all the movies on VHS over. Yo, Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid, Pocahontas was 3 of the movies. Yo, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Let's go back to Thumbelina. I watched them all in VHS. Thumbelina has a story behind it too, y'all. Like, real shit. All right, let's continue with the video, but I just want y'all to know, like, really, yes, they're trying to kill us. They're trying to get us to eat 3D. We've been warned about this, and I don't get tired of seeing this. The signs been there. The warnings have been there. People have talked about it. We've ignored them. I haven't. I've been paying attention to all of this because, listen, like I've told everybody, I love history, and I'm not going to stop reading on my history and learning just because people want me to think that something is something else. No. So make sure y'all guys catch this replay, part 2 and part 1 on the secrets of Jekyll Island. The links on the description below of each video that I have. I'm gonna start doing that with each video that I, react to and much more. Like I told y'all, like, let's talk about it. Things like this do need to be talked about. I know at certain times people are like, oh, I don't want to hear that shit. It is what it is. Listen, sometimes it can't be. It is what it is, because if you don't learn your history, listen, like I tell people, do your research, learn your history before you end up in a motherfucking ditch making history. Real shit. And some of us end up repeating history because we don't want to do our research. But let's continue with the video.
Scientist? Could he be after consolidating the food supply? I don't know. But what I do know is that Bill Gates is the largest private farmland owner in the United States. Not Jimbo, who comes from a long line of farmers, a tech billionaire. And you know what he's doing with this land? Nothing. Everything that was once growing on it, America, you should be very, very concerned right now with what is going on in the background while they keep flashing this billionaire who got lost in a submarine for the past few days, nonstop. Do you know that they just caught 123 people on the terrorist watch list trying to cross the border in Mexico? Something big is coming, or else all of the media networks wouldn't have agreed to show us this bullshit while our country is falling apart.
I've been saying it. Something big is coming, but people don't really pay attention. You know, like they want to think like they're right, they know everything, but sometimes we gotta look. Listen, we don't know everything. We're humans. We don't know everything. But look, check out the second video, which explains what he's talking about when it comes to the synthetic meats and why I'm telling y'all that it is not good for us and it will not help us. If anything, we're gonna die if we eat that. Now, how are we gonna know which ones are synthetic meats in our markets when they're put out there? It's just really, that's the biggest question. What else was they doing in these secret meetings out in Jekyll Island that had us focused on just a submarine, talking about the Titanic and bringing all that back? But you know what? It's a good thing that they brought that all back. You want to know why I say that? Because now y'all know what really happened in the Titanic, and y'all stop thinking that it was just a romance story. Because in the movie, they don't tell us the history. They have to put it on the level. And Gates is a demon. Facts, 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 all facts.
To be disgusted. The source of this meat, they need fast growing cells, replicating cells, just like when you have a farm that makes fruit from a tree. You don't want to plant a new tree every week. You want a tree that gives you a lot of fruit. And this is what they're trying to do with meat. And so what do they find? Well, there's something called an immortalized cell, also known as a HeLa cell. HeLa after Henrietta Lacks, who sometime in the 1950s had cervical cancer, and they removed her cancer cells, put them in a petri dish to see how long would they continue replicating, and they're still replicating today. So if you've already started to read in between the lines, you may guess where I'm going with this, that they realized the best source for fast replicating cells to make lab-grown meat that you're going to eat are cancer and pre-cancer cells. That means taking cancerous and pre-cancerous cells, literally putting them as the base and having those replicate to continue as a fast as possible pace, produce the meat that you're going to eat.
This machine is 3D printing steak. The goal is to create a piece of meat without killing a cow. And this Israeli startup is one of the dozens of companies racing to perfect the process.
It turns out that cows aren't necessarily the most efficient way of making beef.
Still, for many scientists, the holy grail is to not just imitate meat, but actually make it. Back in 2013, professor and scientist Mark Post unveiled the first lab-grown burger at a live tasting in London. This one patty cost over $325,000 to make.
It's close to meat. It's not that juicy, but the consistency is perfect.
I think that was kind of one of those like pivotal.
Man, you got me fucked up. There's no way in hell I'm eating none of that. To this day, I don't eat none of that. Them veggie burgers, none of that. Look at me when I'm telling y'all, to this day, I don't eat none of that shit because to me, I don't know what's in it. I don't know what the fuck is in it. It's all a mystery to me. So unless I don't know what the hell is in it, I'm not eating it. And I don't give a fuck. I've had people call me a little rabbit and all this shit because of the way I eat. Yes, I'm a picky eater. Yes, I don't like eating meats like that. Like, it took me forever. All I eat is chicken breast right now. And when it comes to the ground beef, just burgers and tacos and really chili. Like, yo, you can't get me to eat nothing else. Like, ground beef and the dirty rice. That's it. But, yo, on some real shit, like, I barely eat that. I'm more into the salads. I'm more into all that. Like, I don't know. Pork to me always been nasty. And I'm sorry for all those of you that love pork. Yo, that swine to me, it is what it is. Like, that shit's always like, yo, People be like, qué delicioso, yo, Dios mío, que, and I'm like, oh my God, like, yo, it's like it got this aftertaste after you eat, and I don't give a fuck who gets mad at me by me saying this shit. Like, pork is the nastiest thing that you can eat on this fucking planet. And then the stuff that they eat, like, yo, I've seen people get surgeries because of how much swine they've eaten. They've had to remove, like, yo, oh my God, like, y'all just don't understand. Like, yo, I really don't get people. I really don't get people. But guys, it's all like, yo, let's finish watching this, and then I'll just, finish saying what I'm going to say and really end this live and, continue with my day. Like, I want to thank you all that have been here once again, those that are rocking out with me, because y'all don't have to be here, but y'all here with a shorty bringing awareness. Thank y'all so much.
Little moments where you're like, oh,
To meat, it's not that juicy, but the consistency is perfect.
I think that was kind of one of those like pivotal moments where you're like, oh, this could be a thing.
But it wasn't until 2020 that funding for lab-grown food really started to pour in, with some startups drawing high-profile investments from the likes of Bill Gates and even traditional meat companies.
It's like everyone wants to hop on that bandwagon.
Here's how it works. Look at this perfectly marbled steak. The white stuff is fat, that gives it flavor. The pink stuff is muscle, that's for protein. Scientists had to figure out how to recreate both. First, they take stem cells from a cow and then grow them in a lab.
That means that we're replacing the body of the animal with what's called a bioreactor.
Getting the cells to grow under these conditions is no easy.
For those of y'all, damn, it was on mute. For those of y'all that don't know what they're actually doing in this lab, it's called spliced DNA, right? So for those of y'all that don't really know it, go look it up what spliced DNA is. I'll do that on another live. But I want y'all to really know that this is what they've been dealing with. They even got a movie called Spliced. Like, it came out years ago. So pay attention. They tell us everything. Everything's been in our faces. They tell us the truth to our face in a form of a movie, a TV show, a document, something. But we're not paying attention. We just don't give a fuck. Oh, it's just entertainment. Oh, in between that entertainment, the truth is entangled. I'm sorry to say it. But pay attention.
Easy task.
Usually cells are attached to something. They grow in a petri dish or flasks, and they want to attach to something.
Here, the cells grow suspended in a liquid where they divide roughly once a day. Then scientists move the massive cells to the tissue engineering lab, where they make something called bioinks.
This is the beginning of the bioprinting stage. The inks that we're using actually contain the cells that we've been growing in the labs previously.
Did y'all just hear this motherfucker say the ink that we're using is actually the cells? Peep, ink. Ink. All right, let's leave it at that.
There's one for muscle and one for fat. They're fed through these nozzles, and technicians can customize how much of each goes into the steak.
You can print any structure that you're able to design. So you upload a file to the printer and you can present a steak of pretty much any size and also any proportions.
You can't put a patent on growing and on raising a cow. You can go buy cattle right now, right? You can go buy 8 cattle and get a huge, actually, I think in Texas it's only 4, and get massive tax write-off for it first. But you could produce your own cattle. You can have it butchered and you can eat it yourself, or you can sell it to other people. All you got to do is make sure you have to put it through the right processing to make sure that it's not going to hurt anybody. But you can pretty much do that all you want. This right here, this fucking lab-grown meat, that is a patented process. And you can't do it unless you pay Bill Gates or whoever else owns this technology to use it third party. That's reason number 1.
Yeah.
Reason number 2 is what I talk about all the time, and that's the king's deer, right? It's like a feudalistic principle where the good meat belongs to the aristocracy and the king, right? The warden, the governor, whomever else, and you eat fucking bugs. That's what it is, right? I want the high quality protein. You get this lab grown shit that's going to give you fucking cancer. And by the way, you got to pay us just to make the shit.
To be disgusted. The source of this meat, they need fast growing cells, replicating cells, just like when you have a farm that makes fruit from a tree. You don't want to plant a new tree every week. You want a tree that gives you a lot of fruit. And this is what they're.
So yeah, he not wrong. We're paying them. We're paying them to kill us. That's what they're doing, actually, because our body's not going to be able to sustain that. Our body needs them nutrition that it normally takes. Like, at the end of the day, listen, y'all could believe whatever y'all want to believe. For those of y'all, that be like, oh, this is fake, this is bullshit. Hey, it is what it is on this occasion. Now I can say it. It is what it is, right? So y'all go ahead and try these nasty ass little new shits they coming out. Crazy part is, and my biggest question is, y'all can see when y'all saw on the video, y'all, I'm not gonna play it now, but y'all can, hit the little replay real quick, the rewind, go back a little bit, a couple minutes, and see the ground beef doesn't look any different from the original ground beef. It's crazy as though we're eating ink. We're eating chemicals, nothing but air. We're now trying to reprogram our head, our brains to think that this is real. Yo, those of y'all that are fuck asleep, like I said, stay the fuck in bed. And maybe Morpheus may, feel one day that he might want to get up and just come and save your ass and give y'all that little pill so y'all can wake the fuck up. But till then, listen, stay in bed. Till next time, this y'all Shorty Rachel. I hope all of y'all have a blessed and humble day. I hope all of y'all continue to have a blessed and humble day. Thanks to all those that came. They show love. They shared the video. That rocked out with a shorty and is helping her bring awareness to all these crazy ass things and theories and bullshit they're trying to put in our heads. Let's keep speaking up and let's not shut the fuck up. See y'all on my next live.